Hello, my name is Stephen Alff and welcome back to Alffbooks, and today we're here for a wrap-up. Today I will be wrapping up books 6 to 10 that I read this year. Something I would like to quickly mention that I forgot in the previous video for books 1 to 5 is that those first 5 books were a total of 1,539 pages and a 1 hour listening for the audiobook that was in there. So book 6 was Frankenstein or the Modern Prometheus by Mary Shelley. This is a book that I decided to pick up because, well, it's a classic. I'd heard so much about it. So many people said so much great stuff about it, but then I didn't like it. I only gave it 2 out of 5 stars. And I was wondering if there was something about it that I was not getting. But the more I thought about it, it was just that I didn't like the characters. I didn't enjoy following either the professor or the monster. Just didn't find it interesting. Yeah, which is unfortunate. I mean, you're reading a famous book that you're like, oh, I'm probably going to really like this, going to find this interesting, finally going to discover the real story behind Frankenstein and why everyone always mentions Frankenstein. I mean, Frankenstein is used in Van Helsing, Frankenstein is used in so many other films just as a stand-in character sometimes, and you're just like, well, okay, but what's the actual story? And then, I mean, it's just kind of, not what I expected. It wasn't as interesting. I mean, okay, it wasn't an action movie, but I mean, I was disappointed by it, and that was maybe my expectations were too high, but I just really didn't enjoy it. And the beginning of it was really hard to read. So the first letters at the very beginning of the book, I'm just like, what is this? Who is this? Who's talking to who? And you finally kind of get an idea of what's going on, but it wasn't particularly interesting to read. I don't know. That's maybe just my opinion. Yeah, so 2 out of 5 stars. Yeah. So I listened to Frankenstein and it was a total of 8 hours and 35 minutes. Next, we have The Slower Guard of Silent Things by Patrick Rothfuss. And I really enjoyed this book. This got 5 out of 5 stars, and just like The Name of the Wind and The Wise Man's Fear, I really, really enjoyed it. It is very different though. It is very different. There is absolutely no dialogue in the book, and there's only one character. So the one character is Ori, and we're following Ori for a few days of her life. So it's kind of a few days in the life of Ori. And I find that is so cool because Ori is one of my favorite characters, and it was really interesting to kind of get this insight into the character of Ori. Really cool. I don't want to say too much because I don't want to spoil it, but I find that it is perfect to read it after you've read the 2 other books. So after you've read The Name of the Wind and The Wise Man's Fear, you should read it because it takes kind of, it doesn't directly take from the story, but I find that things you learn in the first 2 books about the world really help you kind of piece together at least a hypothesis in some sense about Ori that I find is really cool. And that is something that I just feel like if you've read the other 2 books, you just benefit from it so much more. So yeah, but it was really cool. I really enjoyed it, and I mean, I could read all those books over and over and over. That book is relatively short, being only 159 pages. The next book was Gullivers Travels by Jonathan Swift. This is a book that I listened to, so the audiobook was 11 hours and 35 minutes, and it was really interesting, though it became less and less interesting the further you got in the book. And I didn't expect the second half of the book. As in, I knew about Gullivers Travels, and I knew what I thought to be the complete Gullivers Travels, but there are 4 voyages in the book, and I only knew of the first 2, and I thought they were the only 2. So that was an interesting surprise, and it really does add to the book because they're completely different to the first 2. So that was really interesting. The only thing is, it starts feeling very repetitive, and yeah. Though, something I do want to bring up, which I find is fascinating, I really like the way the author did it, is where he compares the current society around the time where the book is written, or at least the time depicted in the book. And he has, through Gulliver's voice, I believe, he says that these points of view are not his own, and that he is merely passing on what he's seeing in these different countries, and saying, hey, well, these people see this as completely barbaric, and it's perfectly normal for us, but it's not our fault or this or that, but whatever way it's done, it's just I like that part. Those small parts were really interestingly done, and I liked the way he was definitely judging the society, but no, definitely not. I mean, oh no, this don't take this badly. Like, yeah, I thought that was brilliant, absolutely brilliant. So yeah, only 3 out of 5 stars because of the repetitiveness, and I found that at some point the different places he was going to wasn't adding that much to the overall story. Next, I reread one of my childhood favourite books, and that is Les Frontières de Glace by Pierre Bottero. This is a book that I've mentioned before, or at least you'll probably remember me mentioning the first book in the series, and that is D'un monde à l'autre, which is the first book, and this is the second book of La Quête des Vilaines. So, I keep mentioning this author because I keep rereading his books. I just love them. Childhood favourite books, and they're still favourites, and that is something I find always fun. Obviously, it's still a 5 out of 5 stars. Yeah, that's not changed. What I find always interesting about rereading books is that you sometimes discover things you completely missed. Absolutely completely missed. And that's happened in the 5th reading of the first book in this series. The first time I read these books, I was 11, and now 21, 10 years later, I'm still enjoying them, and that is something I think is fantastic. It shows just how stories follow you, and how you grow with them, and how you read them again and you get something else out of them every time, and that is phenomenal. Love the book. It is following the characters of Ewelan, well, mostly the character of Ewelan, but also the character of Salim, who is her best friend, and the adventures that they get up to, and yeah, I just think it's fantastic. Unfortunately, it doesn't exist in English that I know of. It means I can't share it with you guys, unless you read French or German, because it was translated to German before English. There must be a reason. Maybe there was an audience for it in Germany that they could immediately tap into. I don't know. But it exists in those two, so if you can read either of those, I definitely recommend it. 314 pages long. So book 10 that I read this year was A Study in Scarlet by Sir Arthur Conan Doyle. This was a book that I had been wanting to get around to for a long time, because it's the first Sherlock Holmes story that I actually read. And I know, ridiculous. I watched all of the Sherlock series and the films, and I still hadn't read any Sherlock stories. So now I've fixed that. I've read one. I will read more. It's a start. I thought the way it's written is very interesting. Now, you do notice some of the words used are slightly outdated, but that just adds to it. When you're reading it, just like immerse yourself into it, where you're like, oh yes, he is definitely in London in this as this posh English in some sense. You can just imagine it because of some of the word choices and the way it's described. Though, one thing I found really strange about the book, now, again, I listened to this once, so I don't know if it changes it, but I at some point in the middle, I just got lost because there was a transition. And I don't know if it's because I was not paying attention at that particular moment that I missed something, but there was just a transition from you're there with Sherlock and they're talking about the case or something, and then next moment, you're following two completely different characters in a completely different place, and you're just wondering, what did I miss? What just happened? And it's basically because there's a flashback, but there's no actual clear explanation. But otherwise, very interesting the way it was done. Because I got lost and some things like that happened, 3 out of 5 stars. And this audiobook was 5 hours and 39 minutes. So now we've gotten to the stats part of the video. So basically, what is the total of pages read and the total of hours of audiobooks listened to? So the total of pages is 212 pages, and I listened to 26 hours and 49 minutes worth of audiobooks. I hope you enjoyed this. If you did, feel free to subscribe. If you haven't seen yet, the previous video is a really cool video, and I'm going to leave it here so you can check it out because it's so good. I love doing it with Jay from Captured in Words. He may have appeared here as a hologram in my previous video, and I thought that was so cool. He edited that because I would not have known how to start for that. But yeah, basically, we are organizing a giveaway, and we're giving away 10 copies of The Name of the Wind. So if you want to check out that video, it'll have all the details of what you need to know to enter. We are also doing a live stream on Tuesday, so feel free to check that out. I would love to see you at the live stream. I hope you have a fantastic week. That's all from me. Bye.